But if these people come to America, they don't save up any money. They're just living a subsistence existence, not any different from what they were experiencing before. Then what is the point? What is the point of these people coming here? AOC is demanding that illegal immigrants receive a bailout. The New York Congresswoman praises the state of California for taking U.S. currency from California taxpayers and transferring it to foreign nationals living illegally in the country. Her rationale from stealing resources from American citizens and giving them to foreign nationals is that illegal immigrants pay their fair share of taxes. Well, I know this may come as a big shock to the Congresswoman, but U.S. law actually prohibits employers from hiring illegal immigrants. This, of course, means that most of these illegal immigrants aren't working as 1040 employees. They work under the table on a cash basis. This, of course, means that they don't pay any taxes. Now, we've all been told that these illegal immigrants are the most essential of essential workers. In fact, Hollywood made a movie called A Day Without a Mexican that focused on how American society would just collapse without all of these illegal immigrants. But what the coronavirus has revealed is these workers are not essential to the U.S. economy. They work superfluous jobs and are dependent on a taxpayer-funded bailout in the time of an emergency. We're not deeply dependent on the labor of illegal immigrants. In fact, they're dependent on us giving them a taxpayer-funded bailout like some sort of charity case just to make it by in the case of an emergency. Right now, the state of California is going through the process of furloughing workers, cutting state employee salaries, just so that they can give a massive bailout to workers that are entirely unnecessary to the economy. The taxpayers should not be expected to give a bailout to the servant class for the ultra-wealthy. If these illegal immigrants are the saints that people like AOC make them out to be, then why don't they have an emergency fund? Why didn't they save up enough money that they wouldn't require a taxpayer bailout to make it through an emergency? Because if they can't even save enough to establish an emergency fund by working in the United States, then why are they even here? What's the point? You're going to tell us that these illegal immigrants come to this country because they just want to pursue the American dream. But then they don't even save up enough money that they can afford a 2-month emergency fund? Again, if these people wanted to live paycheck to paycheck, why did they come to America to begin with? Why didn't they stay in whatever country that they were originally from? Because they're not saving money, they're not becoming more wealthy, they're not saving a down payment for a house, they've got literally no money. So what's the point of these people? I mean, I can appreciate the idea of someone illegally immigrating to the United States because they want to give a better life for their family. So they work hard, they make a lot of money, and they save up in order to deliver that better life to their kids. Perhaps by saving up enough money to send the kids to college, by buying a house they can live at, or establishing a business. But if these people come to America, they don't save up any money. They're just living a subsistence existence, not any different from what they were experiencing before. Then what is the point? What is the point of these people coming here? The idea then that the taxpayers need to give a bailout to these people because they have no money saved, because their jobs were never essential, is asinine. If our low-wage workers can't afford even a basic emergency fund, the number one thing that any financial advisor would advise someone that they need to have, then we shouldn't be bringing in more low-wage workers into the economy. Because they're not an asset, they're a liability. And this illegal immigrant bailout perfectly illustrates that point. People like AOC have always been wrong on this issue. We don't need these illegal immigrant workers. They're not necessary for our economy, and they're not even desirable to have. Now moving on, yet another coup attempt against Nicolas Maduro has failed. 2 Americans have been apprehended by the communist government of Venezuela. My question is this: why is the United States still trying to involve itself in the politics of Venezuela? Why are we still backing this guy, Juan Guaidó, who has been completely useless? Look, I don't doubt that Nicolas Maduro is a terrible dictator and that it's horrible to live in Venezuela right now. But it's not the United States' business. We tried to prop up this guy Juan Guaidó as an alternative to Nicolas Maduro. And you know what? It was a failure. He didn't attract the popular support he needed to overthrow the Maduro government. He didn't capture the heart and souls of the Venezuelan people. They did not choose to rise up against Maduro so that Juan Guaidó could take over as the president. So it's over and it's done with. And the United States doesn't need to be involved in this anymore. It's not our job to make sure that every single government in the world follows neoliberal political policies. That's not our responsibility. It's not our burden. The price of oil is so low right now that it actually went negative around a week ago. So why are we messing around with the politics of Venezuela? First of all, the United States looks weak and impotent when it backs someone like Juan Guaidó, who's a complete loser, who fails to do anything to take over the government, and then we get involved in these failed coup attempts that don't successfully unseat Maduro. It just makes the United States look bad. It makes our government look ridiculous when then they say things like Russia interfered in the US election. You mean like how the United States tried to do several coup attempts in Venezuela? Isn't that interference with the government of a sovereign country? At worst, we could get drawn into another forever war. Just like we got involved in these wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that have never ended, that have no end in sight, that the United States is probably going to keep fighting for decades and decades, we could get stuck in a third one of these in Venezuela. Look, the Cold War is over. Why are we trying to topple communist governments when many of the most popular political candidates in the Democratic Party are basically communists? Our leaders are so laser focused on fighting communism abroad that they're oblivious to the fact that this same ideology is increasingly becoming popular with the US population today. The American people are so frustrated with all the failures of neoliberal politics that even something like communism looks like a positive alternative at this point. Look, we tried to prop up Juan Guaidó. He couldn't seal the deal. He couldn't pull it off. So now it's over and done with. We've got enough of our own problems to worry about. We don't need to get further involved in Venezuela's politics. The final thing that I wanted to talk about was a new poll shows that only 32% of Democrats believe Joe Biden is innocent of the allegations that he groped Tara Reade. As a result of this, the betting odds that either Hillary Clinton or Andrew Cuomo will end up being the presidential nominee for the Democratic Party have skyrocketed. It looks like the odds that Joe Biden will be the Democratic nominee are pretty much equivalent to the odds that he will not be. What a lot of people are waiting for is Joe Biden to indicate who's going to be his vice president. Unfortunately for him, he doesn't seem to have a lot of great choices. Joe Biden very stupidly committed to having a female vice president. Had he not done so, he might have been able to pick someone like Andrew Cuomo as his VP. Andrew Cuomo is very popular right now. But unfortunately, Joe Biden already said he'd only consider a woman for the job. Of course, by making such a commitment, Joe Biden just guarantees that whoever he picks will be subject to the criticism that they were only selected because they were a woman and not based on their individual merit. If it was so important to Joe Biden that his VP be a woman, that's something that he should have kept to himself. He should have said that he had a short list of people he was considering and there were several women on the list. And that way, when he picked a female VP, he could say that he picked the best possible candidate, not the best possible female. But Joe Biden is an idiot. So who do we got? Who might Joe Biden pick as his VP? We've got Kamala Harris, but wouldn't that be a little awkward given that she basically called him a racist during the debates? If your presidential campaign is going to focus heavily on Donald Trump as a racist, then you probably don't want to pick a vice president who previously called yourself a racist. What about Elizabeth Warren? Maybe try and bridge that gap with all the Bernie supporters. Except that Bernie Sanders said he would revoke his endorsement of Joe Biden if he picks Elizabeth Warren. Apparently, Bernie Sanders must really hate Elizabeth Warren. Bernie Sanders would rather see a Trump second term than Joe Biden win with Elizabeth Warren as a running mate. It's also no big surprise that all of the credit card companies and banks that have bankrolled Joe Biden's whole political career, that funded all of these political campaigns for him in exchange for him making it so much harder for individual Americans to file for bankruptcy, are not going to support an Elizabeth Warren VP. So who is Joe Biden going to pick? This governor from Michigan, who everyone seems to hate? Doesn't make any sense at all for Joe Biden to pick a vice president who most Americans are familiar with as the coronavirus Nazi. What about Stacey Abrams? An obese black woman does seem like a natural fit for a Joe Biden vice presidential candidate. But if Joe Biden gets removed from being president because, let's face it, he has dementia, are most Americans going to be comfortable with Stacey Abrams being the president of the United States? I would say that selecting Stacey Abrams would be the Democratic equivalent to John McCain selecting Sarah Palin as his running mate. She's just going to look like a token who isn't qualified for the position. Given that these are the options being floated right now, I think it would be fair to conclude it only stands for things to get worse for Joe Biden's political campaign. Those odds of him being the Democratic nominee are only going to go down. But who knows? Anyways, that's all I've got for today's video. If you like this video and you're not already subscribed to my channel, please subscribe.